Around 2000 years ago, in the broad daylight of the Roman Empire, and under the noses of a hostile and highly critical Jewish leadership, a 33-year-old Galilean carpenter prophet did what no one has done before or since: conquered death. We have no alternative but to bow before his claims that he is God's son, that the records of the Old Testament, Moses, the prophets and the Psalms, are the infallible word of God, and that all things he spoke are true. I will tell of the decree of the Lord. He said to me, "You are my son. Today I have begotten you." He shall cry to me, "You are my father, my God, and the rock of my salvation." I will make him the firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth. The character of that man and his actions toward his fellows, lucidly reflected in his words, some of which we have already considered in earlier videos, are the key to our own hope of life. His first concern was not the destruction of a Roman army of occupation, but the battle against self, against that sin-disordered nature of man, where victory requires faith and mettle of an order higher than that displayed in physical combat. His internal enemy, incited by every possible indignity, buffeted, mocked, spat upon, flogged, crowned with thorns, laughed at while hanging naked on a pole, by the leaders of a nation he had come to serve. Betrayed by one friend, deserted by the rest, invited by Pilate to stand up for his rights. That enemy he destroyed with the shield of faith and the sword of the word of God. The ideals idolized by today's world, especially by popes, church leaders and politicians, human dignity, human rights, self-esteem and pride in one's accomplishments, Jesus totally repudiated as evil. The world of both Jews and Gentiles has been found wanting by the young Nazarene carpenter, whose weapon was the innocent childlike surrender to the word of his Father, the Creator, and whose victory was through his death, as the psalmist had prophesied. Out of the mouth of babes and sucklings hast thou established strength, because of thine adversaries, that thou mightest still the enemy and the avenger. And after the fact, as recorded in the New Testament, since, therefore, the children share flesh and blood, he himself likewise shared the same things, so that through death he might destroy the one who has the power of death, that is, the devil. Here was the answer to the warlike Cain, Lamech and Roman spirit, entrenched in the flesh of all nations, without exception. Here at last was the promised seed of the woman who had bruised the head of the serpent, power within, with his own heel being bruised in the process. Who more fit than he, to be the King of the Jews, and universal monarch? Yet Jesus' victory was not a personal triumph alone, but a message from his Father extending mercy to a guilty world. The prayer of Jesus, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do," was a genuine plea for the salvation of blind Jews and ignorant Romans. Some years later, Saul of Tarsus, a Jewish rabbi and also a Roman citizen, who was guilty of the imprisonment and death of a number of Christians, was to experience the reality of that mercy. But if men turn a deaf ear to that dove-like message, in their day of opportunity, they must eventually reap the consequences. Soon, as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Jesus the Messiah will destroy the fabric of present national organizations and create the Messianic kingdom centered in Jerusalem. Who will abide that day of his coming? Those with eyes to see the evidence, the empty tomb, the doctrine of a crucified but resurrected Messiah, the unique character of the story itself, which establishes Jesus' resurrection, will also appreciate the evidence of those many passages of the Old Testament that predicted, centuries in advance, the events we have surveyed. For the most part, the Jews missed the meaning of these passages, preoccupied as they were with problems that seemed to require Messiah's advent in a military role, a mistake that providentially made the Jews unwilling, and, therefore, reliable witnesses of the resurrection. One of these passages, part of the Passover service, was used by Jesus to baffle his adversaries. The stone which the builders rejected is become the head of the corner. The well-known 53rd chapter of Isaiah describes a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, despised by men, and esteemed as stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. This man's behavior under persecution paralleled precisely the behavior of the Nazarene. He was oppressed, yet he humbled himself, and opened not his mouth, as a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and as a sheep that before her shearers is dumb. Yea, he opened not his mouth. So too, the circumstances of his death. And they made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich in his death. Although he had done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. The final verses of the chapter present God's prolonging of his days and his dividing of the spoil, because he was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. It is said that Jews have applied this passage to King Hezekiah, but while the parallel with Hezekiah has considerable validity, the total fulfillment of the whole prophecy belongs to another son of David, Jesus of Nazareth. Other passages that foretell the sufferings of Messiah before the establishment of his kingdom could be reviewed, but these examples already given suffice to establish the point. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to get notifications of new videos. Like, share and comment below.